Two people can stand in front of the exact same price tag and end up paying two completely different amounts for it. Not because of coupons, not because of connections, because of something that happened in their brain about 10 seconds before they decided to buy. Rich people don't get better prices because the world is being generous. They get better prices because scarcity changes the way a brain makes decisions. And it turns out, everyone pricing that decision can read it. Today, we're looking at why everything really does get cheaper when you're rich. Not the tax code version, the psychology underneath it. Before we continue, this video is for educational purposes only. It is not financial advice. It explores behavioral patterns in spending and perception, not personal financial instruction. Now, let's get into it. Picture this. You're standing in the laundry aisle. There's a small bottle of detergent for $6 and a bigger one for $14 that works out to almost half the price per wash. You do the math, you know the big bottle is the better deal, you buy the small one anyway. You're not bad at math. $6 is what's actually sitting in your account right now. $14 is a bet on a paycheck that hasn't landed yet. And when you're not fully sure that paycheck lands clean, you don't bet. You cover what's directly in front of you and deal with next week when it arrives. Zoom out, and this same decision shows up everywhere. The smaller plan instead of the family one, the patch instead of the replacement, the minimum payment instead of the real one. None of these are careless choices. They're the correct choice for a mind that isn't sure it gets a second shot if this one goes wrong. Here's the part almost nobody explains. Behavioral economists Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir spent years studying what scarcity actually does to a mind. Not a poor mind or a rich mind, any mind once it doesn't have enough of something. Money, time, even calories. What they found is that scarcity doesn't just limit your options, it borrows against your attention. Psychologists call this tunneling. When a shortage is close and loud enough, rent in 3 days, a card that might get declined at the register, the brain automatically hands almost all of its processing power to that one problem. That's not a character flaw. It's the same survival setting that makes you forget everything else exists when you're in real pain. The trouble is, modern financial decisions punish tunneling. While your brain is fully occupied making it to Friday, there's almost nothing left over for the slower, quieter questions. Is this actually the best rate? Is this the right time to buy? Is this the smart long-term move? Those questions lose every time to whatever's loudest today. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky mapped a piece of this decades earlier with something they called present bias. We consistently overvalue solving today's pain and undervalue tomorrow's cost, even when we can do the math correctly on paper. Scarcity doesn't cancel present bias, it amplifies it. Because today's pain has stopped being hypothetical, it's the thing standing between you and dinner. And here's the twist that connects all of this back to actual prices. The people setting those prices, banks, landlords, retailers, are remarkably good at detecting tunneling from the outside, often without knowing the psychology behind it at all. Someone applying for a loan they need immediately behaves differently than someone applying for a loan they merely want. They ask fewer questions, they negotiate less, they accept the first offer more often. A lender doesn't need a psychology degree to notice that. They just need to notice that urgency is a tell, and a tell is exactly the kind of information a market will always find a way to charge for. Here's where it compounds. Tunneling doesn't just cost you money in the moment, it costs you the ability to prevent the next emergency. Because all your attention went toward putting out today's fire, there's nothing left to notice the small leak quietly becoming tomorrow's flood. the tire you patched instead of replaced, the appointment you kept pushing back because the symptom hadn't gotten loud enough yet. There's a second layer to this most people never clock. Financial psychologist Brad Klontz has documented how often people avoid looking at their own numbers, not out of laziness, but because checking the balance means confronting a story about themselves they'd rather not read that day. Avoidance feels protective in the moment. It buys you an afternoon of not feeling bad. But avoidance is really just tunneling's quieter cousin. It also trades a small relief now for a much bigger bill later. Except this bill arrives as a fee, a rate hike, or a notice instead of a feeling. So the loop closes itself. Scarcity narrows attention. Narrowed attention produces reactive decisions. Reactive decisions read as risk to everyone pricing your next transaction. That risk becomes an actual number attached to your name, a rate, a deposit, a limit. In a slightly worse number this month, quietly manufactures a slightly tighter month next month, which narrows your attention right back down again. Nobody built this loop on purpose. It just runs, quietly, underneath an ordinary life. So what actually interrupts it? Not a spreadsheet, not more willpower. Willpower was never really the part that was failing. Attention was. What interrupts tunneling is something researchers call slack, a small, deliberate buffer that exists for no other reason than to buy your brain a little room to think before it has to decide. It doesn't need to be large to work. The psychological effect of even a modest cushion, enough that a $40 surprise doesn't become an emergency, tends to show up almost immediately because the mind stops treating every choice like a fire that needs putting out. You're not trying to get rich with this buffer. You're trying to buy back the 10 calm seconds a tunneled brain never gets. And there's a smaller, free version of this you can start using before you've saved a single dollar. Catch yourself mid-decision and ask one question. Am I choosing this, or is the deadline choosing it for me? That's the whole practice. You don't even have to change the decision. Half the time you'll land on the same one anyway. But naming the tunnel is often enough to loosen its grip slightly, because the moment you notice you're reacting instead of choosing, a little of your attention comes back online. So the truest thing about why everything gets cheaper when you're rich isn't really about merit. And it isn't fully about money either. It's about room. Room to think before deciding. Room to wait for a better offer. Room to let a problem stay small instead of watching it grow while you're too busy fighting yesterday's fire to notice it. Wealthy people don't have sharper instincts than anyone else. They just get to use the instincts they already have because scarcity isn't sitting on their attention. And that room, even a small amount of it, is something buildable at any income, one deliberate buffer at a time. If this kind of thing, the psychology hiding underneath ordinary money decisions, is interesting to you, subscribe, because that's basically all we do here at The Cash Instincts. And if you want to go deeper on how urgency gets quietly priced into everything from credit to rent, we've got more videos breaking that down too. Go check those out next.